go and do 150 free presentations and then come back and talk to me.
Wow, there you
go. So I did that.
Go throw yourself in the deep end.
Yeah, and I spoke at nursing homes. I spoke at schools. I spoke to someone's dog if they would let me. It was the best advice that I ever got.
What is going on? I hope you're amazing. Okay, so today's interview is with the amazing and beautiful Jane Anderson. Now, Jane is a communications expert. Jane and I do very similar things. She teaches people a lot about the strategy. Within our video agency, we do a lot of the implementation of the video strategy. So this was a really cool, nerdy little catch up for us. Jane, for Mind, if you go on and check her website out, you'll see that she's had a lot of PR exposure. She speaks on some of the biggest stages in Australia. She gets asked to be on some of the biggest keynotes that are available. She's spot on when it comes to branding and a lot of different aspects. So I really, really enjoyed this interview. And for me, a lot of the people that I work with personally who are looking to generate speaking opportunities, potentially looking to write a book, this is going to be a perfect interview to check out. So sit back, enjoy, make sure you take some notes. I definitely took some really valuable gold little nuggets. And without further ado, let's roll the intro. This morning, I have the amazing and beautiful Jan Anderson on with us. Welcome, Jan. Thanks for jumping on.
Thanks, Alan. It's great to be here. I'm really grateful to have the time to catch up. Always so much fun hanging out with you and hearing all the things you're up to as well.
Yeah, lovely, lovely. And so Jane actually had me on an interview with her audience and everything else. I've actually had some really good feedback. So more than obliged, more than happy to return the favor and hear more. I've got some personal questions that I'd love to ask more about what you've been up to and what's happening in your world.
Yeah.
But for anyone who doesn't know who Jane Anderson is or what you do, if you'd love to just give a beautiful little introduction as to who you are and what you do.
Yeah, sure. So I spent 20 years working in corporate. So I worked in large organizations. I worked in small business. I worked in government. I was a HR advisor, trainer, facilitator, worked across sales, marketing, and HR. And so I started my business in 2010. And I really started as a career counselor was really where I started. But because of my background with corporate, I did a marketing degree, but spent a lot of time in HR, and the intersection of those two things is usually communications and just teaching people and helping people to communicate better. So since 2010, that was where I started to play. So I'm a strategic communications expert. So I help people to work out what's the strategy behind, like, not just being able to have good communication skills and communicate with people with emotional intelligence, but it's more the strategy behind what will get leads, what will get connection with an audience, that kind of stuff. So my obsession is really helping people to improve. I just love seeing people. My obsession is how can we make this better? I'm always looking for finding a better way, a better system, a better approach. And so most of the clients I work with are typically experts in their field. So speakers, trainers, coaches, consultants. I still do a lot of work with corporate. I've sold to some of the world's biggest organizations. And most of my time I'm helping them to be able to work out, well, how do you actually get all those clients that you have had? So I sometimes still work with them, but my real passion is helping people do that. So video, how to do. And I'm not a video expert at all, but there's plenty of times where I go, okay, you need to talk to Alan.
Yeah.
He's got this amazing studio. He's got this team. And a big part of what I do is help people unpack their thought leadership. And so, because as you know, having that, it's all very well to say we're going to do video, but you need content. And it's not just content, but helping people to step into their power in terms of, well, what do they actually think? Most people I work with have got about 20 years experience in their field. And so it's just giving them the confidence and the tools to unpack their thought leadership and start to write books, videos, online courses, speak at conferences and events. And most people come to me and say, I want to be you when I grow up. How do I get to do what you've done?
Yeah.
And that's all that stuff, which is fun.
Awesome. So look, and that's great, because a lot of it, and I'd love to unpack what you've just mentioned as well. There's a couple of really cool things. For those of you who don't know, like, Jane does speak at some really big keynotes. If you have a look at her website, she's called on as an expert, not only for social media, for branding, for really all the things she's just mentioned, helping people step outside their comfort zone. And if I can say as well, as a woman in business as well, it's quite a refreshing thing to see as well, that you're in helping. And I know that this is a big focus for you, empowering women, empowering people who really need help stepping into their power. So I'd love to unpack what that means, stepping into someone's power, and why you think this is such a big topic, or why it's such a big thing for people.
Yeah. So well, if you think about, if I think about 20 years ago, we only just had, say, the internet had only just come in, we didn't have YouTube, all those things. For you to be able to have a voice, and by the way, if you're listening to this is for men as well. So a lot of the clients in the past I've worked with were men, and still do today. I tend to do a bit more one-on-one coaching with some of my male clients. But what I've found is that, years ago, for you to have a book written, for example, you needed a publishing deal. If you wanted to have a TV show, you had to work with a TV network. You had to be a celebrity. You had to do all these kinds of things. And what happened was, as a result of social media and all these platforms we work with, is that they created a level playing field. And so that meant that we don't have to wait for all those things. We can actually have a voice, and we can find a way to have some level of self-expression, and creativity to be who we want to be. The other thing that happened was that, as a result of that, we started to see a new definition of identity. So in other words, so we've got this permission, because we go, well, there's someone I saw on YouTube just like me, and they are doing this. And so that's created opportunities for people to go, oh, so I don't just have to go to uni, and I don't just have to go and get a job, and I don't have to, there's opportunities to do things differently. So as a result, that means people started to question who they are, and so it takes a bit longer today. The research tells us that people take a bit longer to identify who they are and their identity, because there's so much opportunity. But what that does mean is that we all have, I do a lot in personal branding. We all have a personal brand, whether we like it or not. It's just whether you've got the one that you want. So we have the ability to make a conscious choice. And when you're stepping into your power, I think it's really about three things. I think it's about getting clarity about who you are, your identity, who you serve, and what is the work that's going to be your impact on the planet. The second thing is communication. So what's the platform? Because it's all very well to have all this clarity in your head, and that's lovely. But what are you going to do with it? Like, where are you going to go? You're going to do video, you're going to do podcasts, are you going to write books, you're going to write blogs? Like, what is the expression of that to make that happen? And then the third part of it is that I talk about is control, because control is all about when, yourself, your power and your brand and your authenticity and congruence of who you are shows up most, or your character shows up most, when things go wrong. And so I think there's times where we don't step into our power because we see that personal brand or this identity of us is, oh, it's all lovely, I'll get 5 more likes on Instagram today. And, and it's all this vanity type space. And that's not what we're here for. Control is about when things go wrong, and brands that are congruent and really authentic. One of the things that I learned from working many years ago, where I started a lot of this, was I worked for Sir Robert Mathers and the Mathers family, from the Mathers shoe family. And, one of the things I learned from them was that, if a customer comes back and says that they've had a problem with a product, then we treat them just as well and just as nicely as we did as when we sold it. because that's about the brand and the brand congruence. So I think there's a big part, and that a big part of brand control is also how you manage your time, and that you're taking the lead and being proactive when things don't necessarily go right.
Yeah, I love that. All right, cool. So some more stuff I'd love to unpack. That key, like the word that sort of stuck out for me is authenticity, and maybe it's because I get asked this question all the time. A lot of people will come to me. So with a lot of the people who work with us when they're looking for a video presence, is they will come to me and they'll say, how do I be more authentic, or how do I, and I think when I unpack it, when I think of the word authenticity, I think of, really just being yourself, but again, stepping into your power, giving yourself permission to be yourself. And people are really scared of that, aren't they? And so I'd love to understand, like, what are some keys, or what are some things that you would suggest to someone who may be struggling to understand how to be authentic, or what does authenticity look like for them? What would be some of the things that you'd be looking at?
Great question. And authenticity is the currency that you and I work with. That's the thing that is how people are measured in. We know that that's a metric that makes things work. So I think there's a couple of things. One is I think authenticity can sometimes be seen as in a connection with, say, being nice, or I'm authentic and I'm a nice person, but I always say, well, you can be excuse my language, you can beat this out. This is going to, so you can be an authentic asshole as well. So I was married to one. So, but we can all, I think there's a currency, or what I say to people just to be mindful of with authenticity is, yes, that's what people want, because it's polarizing. So if you're authentic and you're not a particularly nice person, you're probably going to attract people who are probably not that nice of people, but that's great, because that's the audience for you. And then the more authentic, congruent you are, and by the way, authentic doesn't always mean unfiltered. So I always think about that you have a responsibility to your audience and the people that you're working with to connect with them and to show empathy and compassion, because all the problems that they are having is probably what you've experienced. The challenge becomes when you're trying to get authenticity to balance with vulnerability and professionalism. And so for a lot of those that I work with are working with big corporate clients. They're trying to work with big industries, and this, whether you're business to business or business to consumer, it doesn't really matter. There's two things that I really look for when I'm helping people to make sure that they've got authenticity in their communication. The first thing that I look for, and because you talk about this too, where you're trying to still maintain, we say, professionalism, or you're still trying to be classy. So a big part of that is I talk about not doing therapy on stage. And this is something that Matt taught me.
I think I know where this is going, but I'd love to,
because and it's a really good word that you use, which is around that classiness, because the audience, and I know you talk about this, which is around the audience needs to feel safe. They need to feel like you've got this, you've got control. And so if we can maintain, and it's not saying that you're not talking about things, but you have to have processed whether you've been through certain challenges. So for example, I had been through post-traumatic stress disorder as a result of an incident that happened many years ago. Now, if I talked about that 10 years ago, I was going through it. I was still trying to get my head around it. I was going through treatment and all sorts of stuff. Today I can talk about it because I've processed that and I've recovered. So I just really encourage people, first of all, to always be mindful that have they processed problems and challenges that could be a bit emotional, and that reduces the professionalism and classiness. But not just that, it reduces the safety and trust with the audience. And the second thing is and whilst you might get lots of comments, you might get lots of vanity metrics that says, oh my God, you're so amazing, that's so me. in the long term, you got to be really mindful, is that going to add value to my brand and to the audience?
To where you're going.
Yeah. And then the other thing that I look for is vulnerability with humility. So if you look at the language that people use, is that we've got to be mindful that when we're authentic, is that it's not all about us, is that we've got to look at, well, am I talking about the problems and challenges and hopes and dreams that my audience are talking about? You might have your own personal stories and things like that. But if you look at some of the best communicators, is that when you look at their language, is that it has very limited pronouns of I, me. It often references, I was speaking with this person, or here's someone who does a great job, or, so they don't actually make it all about them. And it's not saying that you're not being authentic, but it takes a bit of practice and a bit of mindfulness to be authentic. Is really about being able to connect with your audience around those problems. And if it's just authenticity and self-centeredness, it's not going to work.
I love this. I love this. And there's definitely a lot that I can unpack from that as well. I just want to reiterate the point that you made about having your audience feel safe and trusted. Because this was one of the questions that I sort of said, yeah, I'd love to ask about this. And thank you so much for bringing it up. Is, the thing is, a lot of the time, like I'm working with my clients and I'm really getting them to push their boundaries on being vulnerable. And it's that level of, how do you be vulnerable without destroying your brand and destroying your reputation, whilst just sharing openly and building that trust? Because one of the hardest things, I guess, in this digital world is really, especially anyone who's doing anything online, social media, building a business or generating leads or whatever the case is, it's trust. Anyone can do dumb shit and get attention.
Yeah.
It's really building your ideal client's trust to not only be able to generate the result that they're looking to achieve, and know that they're going to enjoy the experience as they're going through it, and it's a reasonable price that fits their budget, or all those other things. And so when it comes to putting yourself out there, when it comes to really stepping into your own power, I love that sentence. Have your audience feel safe and trust that you've got the space. And as long as, I guess, and that requires, like you sort of said, if there's experiences or potentially, traumatic things that you're sharing, or, and you're not yet through that at that stage, like if you're going through a breakup, or, you shouldn't be talking about relationships and all those other things as well. Yeah.
Yeah. And even you can bring in other things that are still authentic too. Like let us tap into, what is life like, what's it like to hang around you, like, so for example, like I've got a client that I've worked with not long ago, and all her content that she put out was perfect, absolutely perfect, not a hair out of place, nothing. The problem was there's no connection. And so there's nothing, like, I'm like, I don't know, what do you eat for breakfast? Like, you seriously want me to take a photo of my cereal?
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know. Like, what do you eat? I don't know if that's what you eat. The problem is you don't value it, because that's something you do every day. But I think it's easy to get caught up in, but I'm selling this product. I'm selling this program. I go, no, they're not. No, you're not. You're selling you.
Yeah.
You're selling you, because I can go and get help of what you're doing from about 50 other people within a Google search.
Yeah.
So let me connect with you. I want to know, do I like you? Would I like hanging out with you? Because that essence is the only way you can stand out.
Yeah. All right, let's talk about that, because I have that thing, like that exact scenario happen all the time, where someone will be like, I just need to sell this product. I just need to sell this product, right? And the only concern is that, and I was the complete opposite, where I was outselling my personal brand and everything else. But then like from my own experiences, I had a really big And I've learned through that and grown through that now. But I actually used to take things on very personally when someone said to me, "Well, look, Alan, I'm sure your product or service is great, but it's not a fit for me." And I used to take it personally, right? So you've got this product and the person, which is obviously then, looking to draw someone into a business or attract someone into a business, product or service, or whatever the case is. And so when someone says, it's all about the product, and then I guess the personal side aspects of it, I learned a really big lesson around, business is not personal. It's yes, you're putting yourself out there, but it's not personal.
That's right.
And this is where we need to have that degree of personality where people are attracted because they know, like, trust you, but they also know, like, and trust your product and the result that you create. So I'd love to understand your take on building a personal brand that's actually works in a business, and just some key points that you think are really important.
Yeah, great. One of the things I talk about that can add a lot of value is embrace your nerdiness. So, and I had a great mentor, still connect with him, say Matt Church, who was the founder of Thought Leaders Business School. And he talks about, he wrote a book called Amplifiers, and he talks in the book about and he also has been the person who's trained most of us that have spoken on some of the biggest stages. And he talks about, you've got to amplify you. And so you've got to find out, okay, well, what are the elements of my brand? So for example, I'm looking at my dog, but he's asleep. Hang on, let's see. I might be able to do it. Here we go. He's a dead weight.
Oh, hello, puppy. Oh, is he a British Bulldog?
He's a British Bulldog.
Oh, I should go get my British Bulldog.
Have you got one?
Yes. Oh, I'm going to pause it. Just one sec.
Oh, you're joking.
All right. So this is Frankie. He's actually an Aussie Bulldog. An Aussie Bulldog, not a British Bulldog, I got told, but
we love Aussie Bulldogs. Yeah. Hello, Frankie. Oh my God, you are. Oh my God, I can't believe this. Hello, Frankie. Hello, beautiful. We need a screenshot. Have you got a spare hand to do a screenshot there? Oh my God.
There we go.
I can't believe it. Good boy. Yeah. Hey, say hi, Frankie. Say nice to meet you, Frankie.
I thought I could hear him snoring underneath.
Yeah.
I was like,
sometimes I have to be mindful that he doesn't come up on, because I can't hear it, and I meant to check.
No, that's all right. No. It's all good. It's all good.
All right. That's hilarious. I can't believe that.
So we're talking about embracing your nerdiness.
Embrace your nerdiness.
Yeah.
So when Matt talked to me about identifying things, amplifying you. Yep. And you think about, for example, like if there's something that you're really into and you love, like you and I are into bulldogs. So we go, great, we love Aussie Bulldogs. We got a little friend called Ezzy, who's an Aussie Bulldog who we adore. So, if you love bulldogs, then, if the dogs are a real passion for me. I love bulldogs and involved in a lot of, that's when I nerd out. Or even, if you're a serious kind of person, you kind of then amplify your seriousness and make it funny. Like any type of part of your personality is, if you can amplify it, it actually can be really quite funny, but it connects people to you. So to give you an example, we run a program called Content Club, and as you know, and we always sing your praises in Content Clubs.
Oh, thank you.
Talk to Alan, because we know that people create great content. There was one lady that contacted me, and she lives in Townsville, and when she contacted me, she said, I know I need to do more content, and I know I need to do blah, blah. She said, I haven't been getting my blogs out, and I know I've got to do more video. And she said, but you put a photo up on social media the other day, and it was a photo. And what I did was I got a picture of our community, and I got everyone to go and get their dogs. And most people in our community have dogs. And if they didn't, that was okay. They could get their cat or their bird or whatever.
Yep.
But she said, She said, but what got me was, she said, I love dogs. And she said, when I saw it, she goes, oh my God, I've so got to do content. So I've got to be
Yeah.
there. When is it
Yes.
on?
Yeah.
And because it's the human side that you go, yeah, she needs to create content, sure. But it's all about, am I going to be around some people who I love to hang out
Yeah.
with? We have something in common, and I'm part of a community, and I'm part of a group of people where I feel like I belong.
Yeah, I love that. And just to back that up, you know what's the funniest thing is, like, people will come to us and say, we'd love to do like a whole day of filming, distribute it out on social media, all those great things that we do, right?
Yep.
What's funny is that we will create a little bloopers video, and the bloopers video, like, the person is looking forward more to the bloopers video than they are to like the professional, well spoken out
Yep.
content, because of this exact reason that you're talking about: embracing your nerdiness, embracing the fact that you are just having a laugh, or getting shit wrong,
Yep.
or whatever the case is. It's like, it's okay. And
Yeah.
it's the real version of you. It's not the like second, third, or fourth take. I got the
Yeah.
script perfect, or I got whatever perfect. I'm now going to, go, it's the real version of you. It gets the most laughs. It gets the most attention.
Totally.
Yeah.
I love that. That's so good. And how powerful to capture that in that moment. Like, that's when
Yeah.
you really get to see it, for sure.
Yeah.
I love that.
Awesome. Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think, yeah, just to reiterate what you're saying, is because it's really what it's doing is it's just amplifying more of who you are. Just
Yeah.
as much as like people really do want to be educated and everything else, they also want to be entertained, and they also want to be able to relate to someone,
Yes.
especially for us, stepping in front of a camera, it's a daunting thing.
Yeah.
And that, like, just depending on your own, who you are, your own experiences and circumstances, what challenges you face are always going to be different to the next person. But everyone goes through it differently. Everyone works through it differently. And it's just about, like you said, embracing all of those aspects, to put a final piece together.
Yeah. I think if you can bring those things in, because someone will find a connection with that. And, I wrote in a book, I recently wrote the book, Put Yourself Out There. And I talked about that when people see perfection, is that they go into comparison. So they go into this sense of, oh, that's so amazing, and I'm so not. And, I feel this gap between you and me. And so, but when you see authenticity, and then what you feel like you experience is possibility, is that you go,
Yeah.
wow, so they're doing this, but they're just like me. Is
Yeah.
that, oh, we're connected. Now
Yeah.
I can open my mind up because there's some kind of connection with us. Now I can see some kind of possibility.
Yeah, absolutely. Love it. All right. So, Jane, I'd love to just unpack your own personal journey. So, because there's a lot of people who I know that I work with, and there's a lot of people who will come to me and say, look, I'd love to do some more speaking. I'd love to, potentially write a book, and all those other things. Now, most recently, this is probably the thing that surprised me is, I know, like, I work with a few different real estate agents. I noticed that you spoke at the real estate conference. What's it called?
At ARIC?
ARIC,
Yeah.
yeah, that's the one.
Yeah.
And I was actually going to, I wasn't able to make it up this time around, but I was planning to try and make it up to ARIC next year anyway. But it fascinated me to see your name
It's
there
amazing.
as one of the speakers, and all the other things. And so that's like a recognized, like, obviously for me and the people that I work with, that's a very recognized conference. And I know that you do much, much more than that. Just having a look at your website and some of the publications and TV outlets and things like that. So I would love to, I guess, dissect how this all started. Like, what are some of the things that you did early on in business? So I'd love to first ask, when did you start out in business? And what are some of the key things that you did to get yourself recognized through that process?
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny, isn't it? Like, you see all these things that go up and you think, oh, like, do those things all happen overnight? And they just don't. Like, they're just years and years of work. But I've been really lucky that I've had great people around me. But, there's no doubt about it is that I didn't grow up in a family of entrepreneurs. I've grown up in a family of government workers. So, people who play safe. So this did not come naturally to me whatsoever. I've made plenty of mistakes. But when I started out, what I did know is that I always knew I wanted to have my own business from a really young age. So about 10 is probably the age I can remember, 9 or 10. So I always knew that was what I wanted to do. I just never really knew what it would be. As it went on, coaching, I knew I started to coach. I was working in L&D, in learning and development in organizations. And then, so I started off really, I used to work full time, and I coached clients on Monday nights, Thursday nights, and Saturday mornings. And so I started as a career counsellor. I'm still accredited, but don't do as much, but the principles are still used in all my work. So that was where I started, and I got to a point where I had too many clients. So that was contracting. So I contracted to a career management agency, and that's how I just started. And then eventually got to a point where I was, you accelerate a clutch thing. And then I left for a full-time job, and I was still doing the contracting plus another contracting role for working with a productivity company, which is where I sort of started to become a bit obsessed around productivity. So I was still doing 2 contract roles for some time while I was still building my business up as well. And then eventually got to a point where the income that I was generating off my own marketing and lead gen, then as a result, and where I really started, how I really sort of made that happen is the first thing that I'm a communicator. The first thing to me is write a newsletter. I came from a retail background, and I came from sending out catalogs, and I knew that, if you can get things in the mail, or if you can send things out to people and keep connected, that's what you need to do. So I naturally felt an affinity to write and send newsletters every week. That really set my practice up for success. And I still continue to do that every single week, rain, hail, or shine. It's a non-negotiable. We know that people who send their newsletters typically, customers who receive them typically will spend about 47% more than anybody else. Wow. So if my clients that work with me go, you've got to get used to doing newsletters because Jane's on your case. But that's where I started. Then as a result, I started to started to get introductions to some of these bigger clients. I also I'm a very proactive networker. I have written LinkedIn profiles for a long time. At the time, I was helping a lot of people get jobs on LinkedIn, but I changed it over. The process I was using for careers was working for sales for me to get in front of decision makers. And then as a result, started to teach LinkedIn, started to write profiles. So there was no one writing profiles back in 2009 in Australia.
Yeah,
there was
wow.
only a handful. It was only a handful of people. And it was only for CEOs really back then. And now it's really for everyone.
Yeah.
But as a result of that, then sort of but I got lost at one point. And what happened was that I was doing so much coaching, and I hit this ceiling, and I was like, I physically cannot work any harder. Like, my calendar is absolutely chock-a-block. I can't get the price point any higher. I don't know what I'm doing. So I spent some time researching and trying to find, well, what am I actually trying to build here? And then who could teach me? Because surely somebody has done this. And that was when I ended up going to Thought Leaders Business School. So I was in there for 7 years and ended up on faculty in there, which was terrific. And, I'll always be grateful to Matt Church, and as many people are in this industry who adore Matt. And he was really the person who identified, he said, you know what, coaching is only one of the things you need to do. You need to speak, you need to run workshops, you need to be training, and you got to do everything. And I thought, but how am I going to do that? I've got no more room in my calendar, and I can't charge. I just can't work out how to charge anymore. So as a result, he really showed me the first thing that, and this is what I do with people now, is the first thing I notice is that people don't bring on support early enough. So it's often a virtual assistant, something like that, even if it's just to get, I think what happens is people think that if I bring on support, that now creates a cost for me. And so what I look for people when I'm helping them, and this is what I wish, this is where I started, this is exactly what I did, was I looked for if I'm going to get some help, it better be a revenue generating activity and not a cost center activity.
Yeah.
So so that was the first thing, was okay, stay in what will generate revenue, and that was then moved over to other administrative tasks. But that was really where it started. As a result, so as you said, to get on these stages and speak, speaking is not my natural skill. I'm my mentor, so I have to work very hard at speaking. But it's possible, you know, if I've been able to get on some of those stages, anybody can. It just takes, you know, but what it does take is I had my speaking coach, the first person I worked with, who said, okay, I've shown you what to do, how to tell stories, how to manage a bit at stage, how to, you know, have some presence on a stage. And they said, go and do 150 free presentations and then come back and talk to me.
Wow. There you
so
go.
I did that.
Go throw yourself in the deep end.
Yeah, and I spoke at nursing homes. I spoke at schools. I spoke to someone's dog if they would let me. Because
you might have had to use treats to keep their attention.
Exactly. Lots of bribes involved there.
Yeah.
But it was the best advice that I ever got, because it taught me how to understand the audience I was speaking to. It taught me how to read a room. And it taught me, you know, just the power of, like, you've got to, and just knowing your stuff and knowing your content, how to entertain, how to engage, how to create not just get up and speak, but even Matt Church talks about this, where he says, your job as the speaker is not to just get up and talk. Your job is to change the room. And if you're going to learn how to change a room, then that's, you know, I've had a comedy coach, which is why, that's why I'm so hilarious. You can tell. No, people like, I'm happy to acknowledge people who've helped me, like Kate Burr's a comedy coach. She's in Adelaide.
Yeah.
I've worked with stagecraft coaches. Robbie, who's at in Sydney. So these are all people that teach you how to hold a stage. Storytelling, I've done a heap of storytelling training. I've worked with people like Maz Farrelly, who is the world's leading expert in reality television.
Wow.
So she created Farmer Wants a Wife.
Wow.
She's in the original group of the Big Brother, like all those in Australia. So what I had to do is I was like, okay, this is a pretty big investment. I've got to be pretty serious about it. So I don't naturally have the speaking gift and the gene that everybody else, all the other speakers seem to have got.
Mm-hmm.
I've had to work really hard on it, but it is possible. And it's just been get the right training, the mentoring. And also I was very much a trainer, like a corporate trainer. And I was trying to do training on a stage, and it wasn't working, because that's education. The stage is about inspiration.
Yeah.
And so it was quite different, but yeah.
Wow.
So all those stages now, and they're learning how to work with bureaus. So the bureaus, so meeting planners and conference organisers, how they decide to work with you, building speaker kits, show reels, deciding on topics, pitching, all those sorts of things. So it's a different ballgame. I'm now in a mastermind with 4 people who have all won Speaker of the Year.
Wow.
So I'm in a mastermind with Keith Abraham, Rowdy McLean, Amanda Stevens, and a big part of it for me was, I do a lot to help them, but they do a lot to help me. So you've all got to have a pretty equal footing and come together too. But if you want to speak, get around speakers, join National PSA, which is the Professional Speakers Association.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I started as well.
Yeah. Great advice. And what I love about what you shared is it wasn't exactly like you said. It's not something that just happened overnight. I don't know, you didn't mention who gave you the advice, but it was 150 different, go and talk to 150 different audiences and read the room, get the experience, throw yourself in the deep end, really learn and understand what's there. Because I think it's interesting, isn't it? I think there's a lot of people who have this conception that I'm just going to do some speaking, and this person who has an audience of a couple of hundred people is just going to automatically recognize me. because of some fairy tale reason, and I'm just immediately going to step up
but they're ringing you and saying,
of course,
speak.
but it's absolutely nothing like that, is it, Jane?
Not at all. Every opportunity has been something I've created. I've got on, I've rung meeting planners, you know, like even things like I would walk into a hotel, and I still do this now, and I teach my own clients to do this, is if you walk into a hotel, go to the meeting room board that's in the hotel and look at all the meetings that are on. Like, what's the conference that's on today? They're probably going to have that same conference on next year. Ring them up and say, you know, this is what I talk about. I'm happy to come and speak. You know, what can I, you know, so just being, they're not going to ring you up. Like, you have to get out there, go find the conferences, introduce yourself. But the big thing for speaking is collateral. Pull together, you know, a book, a bit of a video. Even people, I say, if you haven't, they go, I haven't got a show reel. I go, well, get Alan to, you know, go to the studio and do a piece to camera and say, hey, you know, my name's Jane. This is what I speak about. I love to be able to connect, engage with audiences, and this is what I do. And, you know, just because you haven't got a show reel doesn't mean you can't turn your camera on and just give them something. If you want to speak.
Yeah, absolutely.
Don't just put photos up all the time.
Absolutely. All right, cool. Well, is there anything else that you wanted to share? I know that we've, you know, talked about branding, speaking, those sorts of things. Is there anything else that you'd like to share or finish the conversation off with?
Yeah, I reckon a big part of this game is surrounding yourself with the right people. And I was hanging around with what I would call the wrong people. They were nice, but had no experience. And I get that takes courage in it. And so I would really encourage people, if this is where you want to go and you want to build something like this, is get connected to where those communities are, or if not, put yourself out there and create your own. Go work out where are more, if you want to speak on stages, go hang out with speakers. If you want to hang out with experts who are doing $1 million a year plus, where are they? Go, and, you know, don't be afraid to pay for their time. You know, there's plenty of those there's plenty that are willing to give, but the secret is, if you ever get mentored by someone like that, implement, because it's the highest compliment that you could ever give your mentor or coach, and they'll help you even more.
Absolutely. I just want to pull out, like, thank you for sharing those things. And I just want to reiterate what you said about creating your own. I think that's a little bit of advice that I got given to by one of my mentors, is, and she has done some really big, she's been asked to speak in front of, you know, big audiences and other things like that. And she said that to me is one of the things you really need to pay attention to, is the fact that these things just don't happen overnight. You need to go out and create your own audiences, go out and create your own presence. I really love like the experience part of what you're saying, and really understanding how to run and operate a room, how to hold them, how to, again, coming back to how to have them feel safe and trust you. But also like those aspects of storytelling, entertainment, and everything else. So if someone's interested in getting in contact with you, finding out more about you, whether it's speaking, working with you, or anything else, what's the best way to get in touch with Jane?
Yeah, thanks, Alan. So you can go to jane-anderson.com. I'm obviously on things like LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter. You know, reach out. Feel free to just jump on the website. There's a chat thing there. MC looks after my schedule. He's live on there, so shoot him a note. Please feel free to reach out. I'd love to hear what you're working on and if we can help.
Awesome. Thank you so much for jumping on. I've definitely gotten a lot out of this. And yeah, I think there's so much to dissect out of this. I'm definitely keen to go back to this and re-listen to it. I think there's a lot of different things that we talked about that people can really get out of and really use anyway. So much appreciated. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And enjoy.
Yeah, thanks everyone.